Hello, I'm your host, Giselle Gamby, and this is the Intuitive Pull Podcast, where together we'll embrace the plans we did not make yet, unfold businesses and lives that are so much greater in wealth in all ways than any business or life plan could ever achieve. My wish is that you make intuition your most trusted advisor. So buckle up, get present, and let's go. I'm so thrilled to have you here today with me and with the listeners. So I'd like to introduce the listeners to a wonderful lady I met last week called Susan Knapp. And I didn't know Susan until last week. Somehow I still haven't figured out, because I tried that networking group that you thought you found me in, and I don't think it's certainly not the networking group that I thought that I searched. So somehow Susan found me in a networking event, or found the podcast networking event. And when she listened to it, she felt pulled to message me and to share her story with me. And oh my goodness, is your story one that will be such a blessing? And even before we got on to the recording, I shared a little prayer, and that is, may this episode create many blessings in the listeners' lives, in your life, Susan, in the lives of your children, in the lives of the projects you have in Kenya. May it be a massive blessing.
And it already is a blessing just by virtue of having met you.
Thank you. So I also said to Susan, I'm not going to go into a massive bio like I normally do, because I realized I don't do a very good job with it. I think I go way too long, and I'd rather you connect in with this amazing woman called Susan that's sitting here straight from the get-go. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to dig deep right from the beginning and ask you, thank you, and ask you, what have been the biggest pieces of wisdom that you've amassed through all of your experience? And then you've got such a big story. So I thought the story can, the biography can back up, can show us how that wisdom arrived in your world.
Ooh, see, we love these sort of questions. I would say if I actually had to answer that in short form, I would say the greatest wisdom I have gained is authenticity and living your truth, as opposed to living in a default modality of expectation.
And I know what you've been up to in life, right? Because your life, as you shared it with me when we first met, is an absolute demonstration of that, is an absolute demonstration of authenticity and living your truth, as opposed to living in default expectation. And my goodness, your life took lots of twists and turns for that to come about, as it did for me, and as it does for many of us. Can you give us a snapshot about what it is that you're doing in the world right now, including what your children are doing in the world?
Okay, snapshot is a great word, because it's hard to put it into a snapshot. But I think the way to best describe that is what I do in the world on an energetic spiritual level is, if we imagine a seed that contains the DNA of what I do, in that seed, my DNA is healing, transformation, and education. And so on a physical level, there are many, many things that I do, one of which is homeschool my kids, another of which is I build educational developments in Africa. So I do a multitude of things, but the essence of what I do and the energy that permeates out through everything I do, I really believe is that energy of healing, transformation, and education. And it always starts with the self. So the way that I see the projects that I currently run in Africa is they're actually a physical manifestation of the healing and the work that I've done to transform myself, which has then empowered me to be in a position to continually educate myself, but educate others by virtue of what I do here in Australia and what we do in Africa.
Yeah, perfectly said. So tell us about what is happening in Africa and how that came about through your own healing.
So we, in 2019, my children and I came into an unexpected inheritance. The inheritance came into my world when I was financially, spiritually, and emotionally bankrupt here in Australia. And it came in through a modality where I was able to have access to it, despite the fact that I was in a 5-year bankruptcy sentence. And the intention that the money came into my world was that it would make the lives of my children lighter. Mm. Now, at that time, and still we don't have our own house. My mum very graciously has been hosting us in her house for the last 4 years. And I could have very easily have gone and said, okay, well, we need to buy a house and we need to do this. But actually, the way that I interpreted making my children's lives lighter was giving them that essential core understanding of that they're here to be of service. And so again, I'm still bankrupt financially because I do differentiate my bankruptcy. I was still financially bankrupt, and the kids and I got on a plane and went to Kenya. And at the end of 2019, we'd travelled there 3 times, and we'd left with 2 schools being built. And we now run, my young children and I now run educational development programs that are interwoven into teaching my own children that they are here to be of service, and teaching that reciprocity of energy in terms of, I really believe that we in Australia have probably more to learn from the cultures in Africa than they have to learn from us. So it's really creating that. I always say that we're about transforming global landscapes, and we've grown up in a modality of it's always the Westerners giving to the Africans, whereas I don't agree with that. I actually agree with a co-creation model where we're each learning and growing and healing and transforming together.
So what have your kids received through the intention to make your children's lives lighter? They're incredible. They're like, I know that they're entrepreneurs.
And they are entrepreneurs. And as you've said that,
yeah,
as you've said that, what have my children received? And I've just gone into goosebumps. My children have received the power of grace. My children have received the importance of courage. My children embody with every part of their being gratitude. And in a practical sense, they've learned to step through fear and find gold on the other side with that fundamental human purpose for us being here, which is to be of service. So they really understand that they don't lack in order to do what they do. And I think I should give them the ages of my kids.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, because
it's crazy.
So my little one is 7 and her brother is 12.
And her name, little one, is 7. She's Amalia.
Her name is Amalia. Amalia meaning a gift from God. Yes. She is a gift from God. Yeah. Marley is 12 and Aaliyah is 17.
Yeah.
And I do have another daughter who works within my organisation, and she lives in Melbourne. The rest of us live in Adelaide. So I think that real understanding that my kids have been provided with this gift of shifting from consumers to contributors. And I just think as a parent, there's no greater gift that I could give them. If anything happened to me at the moment, and that's what those gifts are lifelong, they can choose to do whatever they want with them.
I just knew how profound this conversation was going to be. And for the listeners, can you feel it? Like I've got so much energy running from my heart right down to my stomach, and a lot of energy in my stomach, like the power center. Yeah. And you know what you said about my children have the power of grace, the power of courage, and the power of gratitude, that they're gratitude in every single way, and that they've learned to step through fear and find gold on the other side, and that they've learned to move from being a consumer to being a contributor, to being of service to the world. I mean, your children are 7, like the young ones are 7 and 12 years old, and even the 17-year-old, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
To be given that at such a young age, my goodness.
But isn't this our purpose as parents? This is actually why we're here. We've lost track why we're here. And my children all have Kenyan heritage. And so it was very, very, my first two children are adopted from Kenya. My second two children have Kenyan father. And even though I'm not with their father, it was very, very important for me that my children understood a sense of community, that they understand, because I think that's something that we're really lacking in Australia. We've lost this authenticity of community. And so that's really important. It was really important for me to assess what values I wanted my children to be raised with. And then, what sacrifices or adjustments was I going to make to my own life? Because you can imagine I've made quite a few, in order for them, in order for me to, and I guess that comes back to authenticity in your first question. Like, what is it that we actually want for our children? We tend to measure it in terms of success, and they're all external. But if we flip that paradigm and create it on an internal sense, and then what we do is we create a world of possibility.
I remember when we spoke, something that you said that just did not leave me. And you talked about your purpose, and you just talked about your purpose just a moment ago around our role with our children. But you said specifically around your purpose, you said, my purpose is to raise children who can forgive. Can you talk to us about that? Because like that piece when I met you is one of the most outstanding pieces that has stayed with me.
Oh, you're so kind.
And I know that this part of the conversation, I mean, I know that there are so many parts of the conversation that are going to create such a, what's the word I'm looking for? Such an inquiry within ourselves around how we are with our children, how we are with ourselves. And then there's this piece here around forgiveness that when you spoke to me about your story, like it's, and we talked about A Course in Miracles, we have that in common.
Yes, we do.
That I just know that this piece here around forgiveness is going to create more forgiveness in the world to the people that will listen to this podcast.
Well, I mean, we know that forgiveness is the key. I guess to put it into a little bit of a context,
yes.
My children and I have come through a reasonable amount of domestic violence. And so as an example, my son's business is based around 3 hashtags that he created: 99% kindness, 99% gratitude, and 99% courage. And he's 12. And the reason why he can embody those virtues and those frequencies is because he lived the opposite. So because we've lived the opposite of forgiveness, because we've lived through hatred and through a lack of courage and a lack of gratitude and a lack of kindness, we've been able to not become a victim of that, but almost to use it. Forgiveness is a superpower.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a superpower, and it's not designed to be forgiving of somebody else. It's to be forgiving of oneself and to live in that frequency of forgiveness. So, for example, I didn't want to be a single parent, and so I resisted that at all costs. And it was a cost to that. It was the catalyst for my bankruptcy. It led to spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial bankruptcy. And what we fear, we create. And so as things finally got so bad, we stepped into that model of forgiveness. And I taught my kids, and I continue to teach them, the essence of forgiveness, forgiving oneself. Like, I've had to forgive myself a lot for the perception that I'm not a very good parent. But it comes down to actually understanding that what children need is, even if they've only got one parent, they need one parent who's whole and open to that healing and transformation. And obviously forgiveness is the key to doing that. When I teach them that, my 17-year-old has done enormous amounts of forgiveness of herself, But she also applies that within her wider community. And, you know, she'll come and ask me about a bully or something like that at school. It's like, okay, so let's actually unpack why they're bullying. And it'll always come from a place of hurt. And then let's actually flip that and forgive them for bullying, and then employ compassion. And she becomes friends with them.
Beautiful.
I think that art of, as we learn in the course, it's when you have the power to forgive the unforgivable, your reward is peace. And so that's what we did. We literally had a tick list and ticked off everything that we perceived to be unforgivable. And when you put those unforgivable acts as a perception, not a truth, you don't become a victim, you actually embrace gratitude. And so my kids and I are very clear that had we not had those experiences, we wouldn't have built the schools in Africa. We wouldn't have healed relationships that we had with people there. We would have been victims of a system that would potentially be generating lots of money from us through our psychology sessions. You know? Yeah.
Oh my God, so brilliantly put.
Thank you.
So brilliantly put. Oh my goodness, I love this so much. So talking about your kids, the other thing that I remembered, well, I mean, I remember so many things from our conversation, but one of the other things that I remembered was that you said you asked them not who do you want to be when you grow up, but who do you want to be now?
Yeah.
And like, that really affected me because I haven't considered it that way. I've always thought about like, who are they going to be when they're, you know, when they're adults, and grooming them towards that. Whereas who do you want to be now? And I know by you asking that question that Vision was inspired and they're doing some incredible things in the world, even at 7 years old.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about those projects?
Again, it's just, it's really taking that conscious approach. I've been very fortunate because I've lived out of Australia for 25 years from the age of 21. And so what happened was a lot of my formulations of who I was as an adult was created through living in Middle Eastern cultures, living in African cultures, and living in Asian cultures. So coming back to Australia 5 years ago, I decided that I was coming back as an observer. And what I observed is that lots of people here are not very conscious of why we do what we do. You know, as a homeschool mum, and I have one child who goes to school, so I'm not an anti-school person, but I'm a conscious educator.
Well, you're actually, your career has been education all along.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, exactly.
It's not anti-school.
Yeah, so I'm not anti-school, but I'm I'm not even anti anything. I'm actually, let's look at consciously reflecting on why we think the way that we think. So coming back to your question about why do we always wait for kids to finish school and finish university to be something? Why can't they? I mean, and we could even remove the word something. Why can't they just be? And so in terms of, because my kids are still young and obviously still on an educational trajectory, it was, what would you like to be now? And Amalia, my 7-year-old, she was already making soaps and candles, which we do as part of her homeschooling, and she then sells them and uses the profits to build soap and sanitation projects in Kenya. And she said to me, Mum, I want to be everything I already am and add fashion design.
Go girl.
Yeah. So then as a mother, if you ask that question, though, you've got to be prepared to follow through.
Right.
You know, so you've got to actually be building that trust. So I gave her a sketchbook and she sketched some designs, and I had some African fabric, mountains of African fabric that I'd collected through my travels. And so she then created a whole collection. We had them sewn. She's got about 12 pieces in this collection, with the intention of building that up to a point where we perhaps have her designs created in Kenya So create employment for women in Kenya who can sew and then sell them. Yeah, but it really is about, I think one of the greatest lessons that I've learned through healing and doing that work, working on that very painful journey through myself, is when we stand in our truth, we give our children permission to do the same.
What a great statement.
And so our role then is not to parent them that sort of old-fashioned way that we perhaps default into. It's actually to facilitate their growth and their development and their life of peace.
And I actually want to just expand on that, because this is a really important point, because I hear so many times, people saying things like, oh no, I need to sacrifice my joy. I need to put what I would love to do or who I'd love to be aside until my children are grown up. And I always respond to that by saying, if we're having a conversation because you've been pulled to have a conversation, you're what I call the evolutionary leader of the family. You're the one that goes first. And the more that you are who you really are, the more that you step up, the more that the rest of the family does. So it's not an act of selfishness or self-centeredness. It's actually an act of generosity by going first.
Absolutely. And why would somebody be thinking that their children are not the joy?
Yes. That's right.
I think that connects into what we're saying about sort of being in a default. Why are you perceiving that your children are not your joy? I mean, right now, as I'm talking to you, my children are downstairs doing a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
They're fine. I told them that I would be up here with you.
Yeah.
We co-create joy.
Yeah.
They don't rob me of my joy. I mean, and that's not to say that I don't get annoyed or they get annoyed or whatever, but they don't rob me of my joy. And I think parents who are begrudging children because, what, they can't work or they can't earn, they just need to do a bit of realignment, which is very painful. It's very painful. And when I started homeschooling, my son was in grade 3 and he came home and he said, Mum, I'm too stupid to go to school.
Oh, darling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said to him, okay, so don't go. So he stopped. But you can imagine that I had to flip my whole life upside down. I'm a single parent. I have very little money. I live under my mum's roof, but we have mountains of joy. We have nothing other than joy. And sometimes that's that courage, and it comes all down to your intuition. That courage to actually step into your intuition and step into the intuition of your children. My son is actually telling me something that actually can't be disregarded. If that's how he's feeling, sure, we could have worked through it and we could have employed lots of professionals to help him and support him, but why not just actually listen to that intuition and see, okay, I need to make some realignment.
And I remember when you told me that story, you said that had he gone into the school system, he would have been diagnosed with every letter under the sun.
Yeah, I really believe so. I think, and again, because I've come through the school system as an educator, I think school can be really, really traumatic for a lot of children, and it's becoming more and more so. And so children who are kicking and screaming and saying they don't want to go to school for whatever reason, we as the adults actually don't have time to listen to that because we've got to get to work. I've got to get to work so that I can pay your mortgage or whatever it is that I'm doing, that I pretend that I'm doing for you as the child. Is that actually what they want? They've not asked for that. These are societal default narratives that we buy into. And when we start not buying into them, as I said, it's really painful. And I got a lot of condemnation for the decisions that I made about my kids. But now as we've walked through it, and we have really walked through it with grace, people are going, oh, I think there's something in that. I think there's something in that. If I listen to the intuition of my children, and connect that into the intuition that I intrinsically hold, I can work out some stuff's not working. Yeah, I can work that out.
Yeah.
I can work it.
Yeah.
And then I can guide. Not everybody can homeschool, not every, that's fine. But I think that there's still a lot of lessons to be learned.
And we need more people like you. As you said, not everybody can homeschool. I certainly couldn't homeschool. And the gift, with you is that actually being a teacher and a principal of a school, I mean, that's your career. So it's like, it's absolutely a magical combination. The fact that this is who you are already, and you've got all this awareness, and you can see where things are a little funky, and you're also not waiting for your children to become something in the future. You're seeing that who they are right now is absolutely perfect and whole and complete already. And you're nurturing that in their own way, in their own joy. And as you said, courage, grace, and gratitude are who they are because they've lived in the contrast of that.
Yes.
So this is the sense that I got when I met you the first time, and I've got it going on again here. It's like you and your family are such an incredible demonstration of all of that. And I have a feeling, I'll just put it out there, I have a feeling that you're here to lead something for the greater community.
Well, that's so interesting that you say that, and it's a very beautiful observation coming from you, because if I go back to the original DNA of my organisation and what I do,
yes,
if we envisage it as a tree, so the DNA is healing, transformation, and education, and then the trunk of my tree, the strength of everything that I do, is actually in my leadership.
Yes,
and so that's what we would really love to do, and I think that. People say to me, I thought I'd really briefly share with you one of the things that Marley is working on at the moment. So Marley has a podcast called 99 Seconds with Marley.
And he's 12 years old. He's 12
years old, yep. And in 99 seconds, he goes around and he interviews different people in Adelaide about kindness, gratitude, and courage. Now he's actually working on a new venture. So this is somebody who dropped out of school at grade 3 but was asked, what do you want to be now? And he's working on a venture that we're about to launch, which is going to be called Lamborghinis and Lemonade. And basically, it's embracing Marley's love of fast cars with his love of lemonade. Although we're going to be doing a cold pressed juice, which is going to be a healthy juice, which is going to be 99% Marley. But then when you're drinking this juice, you're basically drinking in 99% kindness, 99% gratitude, or 99% courage. And then he's already teed up with different people in Adelaide who have fancy cars, who are going to take him for a drive, and they're going to drink this lemonade and discuss things like kindness, gratitude, and courage. And the idea of this is really, we've looked at the thank you brand, and the idea is that Marley's Lemonade would be sold in outlets, and the profits from the sales of his lemonade will build development projects in Africa.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, he's 12. So this is what he's being taught. He wouldn't learn this in a classroom.
No.
And we've done it around everything that he loves. So we've shaped his education around everything that he loves. So he no longer thinks that he's stupid.
You know what? If you had some kind of program, Susan, where you did this for other kids, I would send my kids to you in a heartbeat. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one.
And this is going to be a TV show. Marley's is actually going to be like a YouTube channel. So it's going to be super fun.
Oh, just how brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love it. Can you tell us about the other projects that you've been, like you talked about the sanitary pads and water project before. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So Aaliyah, my 17-year-old daughter, she's adopted from Kenya.
Yeah.
And when Aaliyah was 10 and Marley was 5 and my older daughter was 16, I was working in the Middle East. For various reasons, I got held under country arrest for a year and put my kids back on to Australia to their dad on a plane. and didn't get them back for 3 years. So Aaliyah was 10, and then I actually didn't live with Aaliyah again until she was 14 and a half. And so they're really formative years for girls, and she'd made some decisions about her life of perhaps not wanting to be here anymore. And so we had some things that we dealt with there. But when that happened, I really held my hands in surrender and said, I also can't control your choices about whether you're choosing to still be here or whether you're choosing to take yourself to another realm. And I held my hands in surrender, and I said to her, but I'm going to do whatever it takes because I wanted you more than anything else in the world. And it was at this point, just after this, that so Aaliyah became a meditator. She did some different things that she still curses me about. But then we went back to Kenya, and we started a dance troupe, and she was discovering that some of the girls weren't coming for lessons. And when she found out that it was because they didn't have access to period products, she started her own organisation. So she's been doing it for a year. She does some small public speaking engagements that provide her with a bit of money. And last year she made 720 washable sanitary packs that were distributed to girls in the community. They get menstrual health education, and Aaliyah sends them messages. And it's been so enormously powerful, because here was a child who barely spoke and was just this sort of wallflower in the back of her classroom. And now she speaks in front of 200-300 people.
Wow.
And her talk is so, like, the energy that this child has is really quite phenomenal. But she says, this could have been me.
Wow.
You know, if her life hadn't been different, and if she and I hadn't met, she may well have been one of these girls in Africa who doesn't have access to uninterrupted education because they've on their period. So she leaves the entire audience in tears. She's such an exquisite soul. And it's just so beautiful to be watching that. She's employed a couple of ladies in Kenya. My other children use their profits to buy sewing machines. And it's huge. It's really huge. And I think one of the biggest things about what Aaliyah does is when she sends videos to the girls in Kenya and they send them back, they are one. They are one. They're not, it's not a foreigner who's coming in and creating work. She's one of them. She's a teenage African girl who was born in a slum and who's leveraging the capacity that she has in Australia to help girls who could have been her. It's a huge story. It's huge.
I mean, every single part of your life, and I know a little bit more of the stories, and we don't need to go into them all here, but every single part of your life, including every single part of your children's lives, are the biggest demonstration of the premise that created freedom in my life in 2002, which is that we not only create our reality, but we create it with love and wisdom always, because there's always divine perfection in it all, always.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Your whole world is a massive, immaculate demonstration of that. And as I said, my God, the sense that I have of how your love could extend even further, even beyond what you're currently doing now. My goodness, it's just limitless.
We are open. That's what we're here for. I really believe it's just something that's evolving. And I came back to Australia as an absolute beginner. I didn't know anything about how things worked here. And I do think that we're evolving into these conduits for this process of love and possibility, where things are starting to get a little bit not as hopeful for some people.
Yeah. And I've got a feeling as well that those who listen, if they're pulled to connect with you for whatever reason, whether it be for about their own children, about their supporting their own children to know who they want to be now and what they want to do now, or whether it be because they want to support your children or employ Aaliyah as a speaker.
Yes, we would love that.
Yes, so I feel like there's a big door open here, right?
We are so grateful
to connect with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in the show notes, I will put all of your children's contact details and your details and your website as well. So let's open those doors to create some magic. I know the magic has already been created just by listening to this podcast, because there are just so many profound pieces to this. And I also feel like this podcast has been a little provocative as well.
We love that. Social disruptors with a pinch of grace.
Oh, what a beautiful statement. I love that. I love that. Is there anything else that you feel to share before we complete?
I would just love to say thank you so much for creating this space. It's really beautiful. I have listened to all of your podcasts and I love them. And yeah, let's see what the future holds.
Let's see. Thank you. Thank you so much for following the intuitive pull to message me and offer to be interviewed. It's been, an absolute blessing. And I got to be with you twice. So I'm the lucky one here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just stepping back on here, after I pressed stop record, Susan and I had continued to have a conversation, and what we spoke about was absolutely brilliant and so important to this episode. So I've asked if we could recap on that, to which Susan has said yes, and we've had a good laugh at that. So this is a little postscript, and where we went to, or how we went to where we went to, is because I said to Susan, Susan, you are so valuable. You've got so much to share with other people. And that has the ability to go so far. And you don't need to do I know that you're completely comfortable financially where you're at with not having, financial resources for yourself. You have them for others, but maybe you don't need to do that anymore. And then what did you say to me in response to that?
Yeah. So I said that I've just finished recording my audiobook, which is a book that I wrote about 5 years ago and haven't been able to reread. I'm about to publish it. And it's really taught me that, and the combination of a fall that I had recently in far north Queensland that banged the back of my head open. It's really about me understanding and now embracing stepping into my expertise, because I didn't think that I actually had any. When I came back to Australia, I was like, well, who's going to want me to do anything and all of this. So I think that, it's very much about where we're stepping into a point of our lives where we are opening to receiving. And the other thing that I've also learned is it's like you were talking about with the overflow. When you're in that point of overflow, now what I understand is that spiritually and emotionally and physically, we are in overflow. Financially, we are not. But what we now understand is the power of that frequency of currency and what we can do with it.
Yes.
So now bring it on. Right. I still haven't quite worked out the how, but now it's just bring it on.
Well, who knows what could happen from this episode, because we felt your value hugely. And
I'm so grateful. I really am so grateful.
And I also know that people needed to hear that piece as well for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's true. I'm really I'm not the sort of old style do-gooder who is just constantly pumping money into Africa with no reward. I measure the rewards really differently. And as we've learned through this episode, the rewards that we currently have in our overflow are priceless. But now we need that balance of creating that financial currency so that we can create greater impact.
Bring it on. Amen.
Bring it on.
I think we're complete now.
We are complete.
I don't think we'll have any more postscripts. Turning off the recording. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I trust that you were intuitively pulled. If you liked this episode, please follow this podcast and share the love with your family, friends, and colleagues. Let them know that I'm here. And if you'd like to have more communication with me, join the Intuitive Pull Facebook group, where you'll find details in the show notes, and you can let me know about what pulls you've been receiving by listening to these episodes. Until next time, so much love.